Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We are coming at you on Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the new year. But if you're watching this on your old YouTube, you'll see that I am wearing the same clothes as I was for Sunday's episode. And that is because we are recording this on Sunday night after me and Jeremy recorded our usual episode. And that's fine because we're not talking about the current Knicks, so to speak. We're talking everybody's favorite topic, and that's trades. Jeremy Cohen, is there anything you like more in life than talking about NBA trades?
No, there just isn't. There's nothing.
You could say illegal things. I won't talk.
Could, but there are people watching, so they'll know. So, I'm just going to say a nice block of cheese.
I was going to say a nice Chianti.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chianti, some fava beans. No, I think
Evan Fournier's liver.
Already. Perfect.
We're going off the rails early because we just recorded an hour. So
we did.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is great. I love doing this. I'm glad we can keep doing this.
Yeah, and let's just say a little behind the scenes. We wanted to do this now because, obviously we're going to have more trade content as the trade deadline gets closer, but we haven't done one of these trade episodes in it's been about a month.
It has.
Yeah, since the unofficial start of trade season at the beginning of December, and now we're further enough away from that, but still further enough ahead of the actual trade deadline where we feel like it's a good time to do a quick little, a refresher, recalibration perhaps of where things stand, and of course this will be a Jeremy Cohen starring episode. So I don't have anything else at the top, unless there's anything else you want before we get into this.
The one thing I'll add, so the last time that we did this, it was really when there was the report about 4 different players on the Knicks: Emmanuel Quickley, Cam Reddish, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose were mentioned in trade talks. And the direction that I went with at the time was I looked at the stars and I looked at the undesirable contracts. And John, wouldn't you know it, there are a lot of players in between some of the best and some of the worst contracts that you got in the league, both players and contract wise. So I thought, what better way for us to go about this than to also incorporate a lot of other names for players who are ranging from not very good to average to very good, because it's all part of the plan. So that's the one thing I want to sprinkle in. We'll still be focusing more on the idea of the Knicks kind of trading from excess specifically meaning, the $23 or $24 million or so that Evan Fournier and Cam Reddish have, figuring things out. I will say at the top, this is going to be a slightly different cap or no cap compared to what we've done before. It's very similar, but it's not going to be, hey, this is a mock trade framework salary wise. A lot of people can do that on their own. I wanted to look at something a little different, and I think that will certainly be accomplished as we go through it.
Yeah, and I guess my only 2 cents I'll add before I let you go off and running is so we're recording this before the Suns game. The Knicks are, after they play the Suns, either going to be 20-18 or 19-19. They're a 500 team, more or less. I think we can feel pretty comfortable assuming that this front office, if they have their druthers, would like to be a slightly above 500 team by the time they get towards the playoffs. And, not that, the 6th seed or the 5th seed or something is playoffs or bust. I think there's a world where this front office could be very happy getting 7th, maybe even the 8th. There are different things, but I do think we are entering a range where if you were to tell me that the front office is looking to explore potential opportunities to improve the present day Knicks between now and the trade deadline, I don't think that's a ridiculous statement. And I'm sure you're going to get into this as we move forward.
Absolutely. I completely agree. They're not going to try to get worse. The only reason they get worse, as we mentioned in the last episode, would be if someone like Jalen Brunson were out for a longer period of time. Other than that, there's no reason to. No. It's just not part of their plan. So without further ado, I'm going to share Knicks trade deadline 2.0. This is very much let's build the bench out. So at the top of the show, I'll just mention, I don't believe that the Knicks are going to do anything too drastic. I think they recognize that the bench needs some boosting. The starting five that they have in place, it's working. I don't see any reason to change that unless a legitimately great player becomes available. The odds of that happening at this deadline are on the slimmer side. Would you
a healthy starting five, we should say. Yeah. Trying to think who's the best player I could realistically envision becoming available at the deadline. I mean, we talked about OG Anunoby last time. I guess he would still probably be my most logical, but I'm not even sure how realistic that is.
Yeah. And I think in a similar vein, if we're talking Siakam, if the Raptors really want to blow it up, but they could still find ways to trade around the roster, still prioritize a player like Siakam. They're going to be the biggest wild card in my mind. But outside of, I like OG Anunoby quite a lot. Outside of him, I still don't necessarily see it working this year unless the price is too good. Price isn't going to be too good. It's going to be a lot to get him. That's why I think they're going to do something on the more minor side. And
we should also just say, like, this is going to be a seller's market, pretty clearly, which, crazier things have happened. Maybe it benefits the Knicks, but like a lot of teams in it. There's a lot of teams that aren't currently in playoff or play-in position that would like to be and that are still fighting to be. So that would only further, make what you said a minute ago correct. This is not going to be like, oh, we could get this guy on this cheap price. Yeah, that ain't happening.
A lot of parity. Yeah, it's going to drive the market. So without further ado, for the next slide, I figured, why don't we take a look at the salary cap sheet? And one thing we could do is I wanted to just kind of go from the bottom. Well, I mean, we could also go from the top to the bottom, but maybe bottom to top might be a little bit more fun. It basically just talking about each player, where we think they're at, and some we've already discussed. But so John, for Miles Deuce McBride, I don't see him going anywhere right this moment.
No,
I just think he's important to the team this year, and I think that's really what we're talking about. It seems like he was.
Yeah, and I'll just preface my thought process for every one of these. It's like it's a scale. Like it's like, what does he mean to the team to the Knicks current team? What does he mean? It's not a scale because the scale goes just one direction or another. This is like a three-way scale. I know that's not a real thing, but like there's what does the player mean to the team currently? What does he mean to the team potentially in the future? And contract works into that. And then there is what might he mean to another team presently? And I guess what might he mean to another team in the future? Like right now, where Deuce falls on all those scales, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Agreed. Jericho Sims. Don't
Same.
see him. Yep. Great. Next, let's talk about both these players. Svi Mykhailiuk and Ryan Arcidiacono.
Really? Are we going to?
Based on the fact that Mykhailiuk has $50,000 guaranteed. Arcidiacono has no money guaranteed. The last day to waive a non-guaranteed player would be, without the deal becoming fully guaranteed, is January 7th, and all contracts become guaranteed on January 10th. Now, the fiscally smart thing in this case would be cutting Arcidiacono, keeping Mykhailiuk on the books with his $50,000. One of them becomes guaranteed. You create a roster spot. I don't think it's going to happen. I really believe, and this could be completely wrong, but something tells me that the Knicks are very comfortable waiving Mykhailiuk, eating the $50,000 as a cap hit, opening up a roster spot, and that way they can more easily make a trade moving forward. I think there's something about Arcidiacono where I believe he's got like a leadership role where I don't want to say he's a Theo Pinson type because they're very different in terms of personality and everything, but just like a 15th man who brings an energy that is really good for this Knicks team. And it seems like that's the role. It's a different type of energy they bring.
Practice player, Tibbs guy, Brunson's boy from Villanova. Like you don't need to say anything else. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but I believe Mykhailiuk might be shown the door and maybe he can come back in some capacity, but we shall see. Quentin Grimes, no. We talked him out quickly. I don't want to spend too much more time talking about Emmanuel quickly. in the sense of moving him and moving him this season. As I've said to you, as I said to others when we were in our town hall, I think there is logic, depending on what the conversation is, for moving quickly this summer. I don't think there's much logic in moving him this year. You're either quickly getting someone who's a high impact player this season, or you don't move him. It's really it.
Either that or some team blows you away with an offer centered around a pick that has the potential to be not only has the potential, but it seems more likely than not that the pick is going to be at the very least a very premium asset. And I don't see where that is. So right. I completely agree with you on quickly.
And for what it's worth, we're not talking about a Milwaukee Bucks pick that's 5 to 20 protected. We're talking about something that is this is likely to convey in the lottery, in, the late teens or whatever it is, but it really has to depend on the deal. Until that happens, just not interested. Obi Toppin. Want to talk about a little bit later, but I just want to point out there was a report this past week from Sean Devaney, or from someone who was talking with Sean Devaney, where it was an executive that had mentioned that the Knicks and the Pacers had discussed Obi Toppin. I'm not surprised. And the reason I say I'm not surprised, I'm surprised maybe about the timing. And to be honest, I wanted to have the Obi Toppin conversation in a few months from now, and we still can, but it kind of spoils what I was hoping I could delay for a little bit longer. I don't want to attack a reporter's credibility. Just say there is an upper tier of reporters, and this one is maybe not in that upper tier. But I will leave it as I think that we can talk about how the Knicks have not given Obi Toppin the opportunity that he deserves, and also that as long as Julius Randle is here, and as long as Julius Randle is playing like this, and you have Obi Toppin entering what would be next year, the fourth and final season of his rookie contract, for his own sake, you have to move him. But for right now, there's no urgency to do that, especially while he's injured. But even after that, there's no urgency to move him this season. So I'll turn it over to you.
I don't know anything about Sean Devaney. I know he's had reports in the past that have not come to fruition. Or he's reported that teams have talked trades about certain guys, and then those trades did not come to fruition. Do I think Sean Devaney is making this up? Absolutely not. And that's because teams talk all the time about all sorts of players. These conversations happen all the time. I think when you're talking about different reporters distributing things that they've heard in different ways, a good example, a counterpoint would be Ian Begley, who I say all the time, and I hope Ian doesn't mind me saying this, but I'm just gonna say it. Ian knows a lot more than he lets on. There's a lot of shit that he could put out there as far as things he hears, because man, I would bet a lot of money that he hears a lot more than he reports, and that's because when he puts something out there, it's going to be because there's real legs to it. Do I think again the Knicks and Pacers probably talked about something? Was there a phone call? Phone calls made? Sure. Absolutely. I don't doubt it for a second. Do I think that means Obi Toppin should be packing his bag for Indianapolis? No, I do not.
Agreed. Next is Cam Reddish. We've talked certainly enough about Cam, and we know where that is headed. Isaiah Hartenstein. John, I want to turn to you first because I have an idea that I know is not going to come to fruition, but I think it's a fun idea.
I think Isaiah Hartenstein is a nice player. And I think if there's one big critique that I would have of Tom Thibodeau this year, it's his use of Hartenstein. And the fact that you have a player who has a certain skill set on offense, and you're not really utilizing that skill set, and you're also putting him into positions, in particular on the defensive end, where you're perhaps exploiting more of his weaknesses than is necessary. For all those reasons, even with all those reasons, I don't get the sense that they are in a rush to trade Hartenstein. because Hartenstein is a guy who seems like he's like, it's like he's I don't know. He seems like a good team guy. We have no reason to believe he's not a good team guy. He's a guy that could come in there and like do the job for the most part. I know the defense seems like it falls apart when Mitch isn't in the game. And to a certain extent, that is kind of true. But I don't know how much I blame Hartenstein for that. I more than anything, I think this team fears the possibility of Mitch going down with an injury for a sustained period of time. And I think they like having three centers on the roster who they feel comfortable playing significant minutes if need be. And maybe if they had their druthers, Hartenstein wouldn't be one of those three, and they would swap him out for a guy that fits a little bit better, knowing now what they know. But all that said, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Would it shock me if Hartenstein was traded? Absolutely not. Do I expect it? No.
Fully agree. Completely agree. Again, I want to say I do not think that he will be dealt. And if he is dealt, I don't think it would be for essentially nothing in return. But a really funny scenario would be if the Knicks called up the Clippers, who are in desperate need of a backup big, especially behind Zubats, and traded him into the Serge Ibaka traded player exception.
Oh my God. You with the traded player exceptions.
I'm saying it's not going to happen. I don't see it happening, but it would be funny to me if it's the Knicks. Well, because I don't think the Knicks would create a situation where they would take a player away from their rotation and not add someone to it. Now, the funny thing is trading Hartenstein into the traded player exception the Clippers have, and the Knicks would probably ask for a second or 2 second-round picks from the Clippers. That creates what in this case would be, pretty much around a $7.8 million traded player exception
for the Knicks.
It might be a little less because the Knicks might have to take back a minimum salary depending on the Clippers roster situation. But then if that's the case, the Knicks can create that traded player exception, get some second round picks or a second round pick, and then go to another team and say, hey, any salary you want to dump into ours, like call up the Jazz. Hey, do you want to move Rudy Gay? We'd eat his salary and you can just dump it in there and we don't have to move any money. And then we could ask you for a second round pick. It's basically doing what the Knicks did with Ed Davis, but with Hartenstein. And it doesn't have to be Rudy Gay. Right? Like it could be anything. They could even trade for a center that makes less than that or around that money.
I was about to say,
swap it out.
There's a lot of disposable centers around the league that don't need minutes if they're on your roster, but that are serviceable enough to give you some minutes. And the Clippers, I just looked it up. They don't own anybody else's second round picks, but they have all of their own second round picks other than the year 2027. Mm-hmm. So like there's, they could certainly trade a couple of seconds. And then just looking at like, is there a team out there that maybe has a center on their roster that is making, and you've talked about this a lot, and maybe we'll touch on it again this episode, making money into next year that they are looking to get rid of? And like, I'll take a gander. There's nobody obvious that comes to mind. But you never know. You never know. Yeah.
And listen, I mean, this type of move or moves would be margin moves. It would basically be, hey, you know how the Knicks just lost 20-25 second because they got Jalen Brunson? How you replenish a little bit. Or you know how they moved seconds to draft in or to buy their way into the first round again in the 2022 NBA draft? Well, that's how you replenish your stock there. So again, don't think it's likely, but I think it's one of those moves where it's like, yeah, it's just not going to take place all at once. So we shall see.
What would the traded player exception would be? Isaiah Hartenstein's salary?
I think it would be that minus the salary they'd get coming back.
But in this scenario, they wouldn't be getting any salary back from the Clippers, right?
They would be getting a minimum salary. They don't have to. I mean, the Clippers could cut that player. But the interesting thing about that is like, he does have a trade bonus. So, and they're already paying so much for taxes, luxury taxes, that you'd imagine they'd want to shave a little bit off if they could.
Yeah.
They don't have to. They could just cut, one of the minimum guys. But if they could move away from doing that, I think they would like to.
Jamal McGee makes $5.4 million this year and 5.7 next year. Oh, that's a player option. And no, that's not.
Yeah,
gonna work.
I was going to say the issue with that is if it were just like a team option at the end, I could.
Yeah, I was about to say if it was team
player option. It's a no-go in my mind.
So it's a good job by the Mavs front office giving him a fucking player option in 2025. Anyway, sorry.
And the promise of a starting role in which he has not had. But hey, look, he made an impact, unfortunately, in that Knicks Mavs game. But contract well worth it for them. So that's Hartenstein. RJ Barrett, I would be shocked if he's dealt this season due to the poison pill, where his outgoing and his incoming salary is just completely out of whack. The scales are tipped ridiculously. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Derrick Rose, we've discussed him. Certainly would understand it. Would be very surprised if Mitchell Robinson moves. You say the same thing, I would imagine.
Not going to happen.
Agreed. Evan Fournier, we certainly talked about him. I think if the right trade is there, makes total sense. And then I don't see Julius Randle going anywhere. Do you?
Not unless there's a shocker, someone coming on the market who we really are not anticipating right now.
Yep. And Jalen Brunson, he's a Knick. It's going to stay that way.
Going to be like Knick for a long time.
Yes. So, all right. We worked on that. I want to talk about, John, are you familiar with Darko? Not the Darko Milicic, but Darko the analytics.
I am familiar with it to the extent that I know it is a career projection analytics tool that I find how it projects players so deep into the future based on, like, for instance, the graphics that I've seen of Darko will take like someone that has played a year or 2 years or like less than 3 years and then project out like their next like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I get a little uncomfortable with that. Yes. But it seems like it's a cool thing. And yes, I'm familiar with it. Yeah,
I mean, they're projections, right? That's not what's going to happen. But I want to talk about 3 things today. One is Darko. They've got DPM, daily plus minus. It's a great stat. There's another, which is EPM, estimated plus minus. That's great. It's dunks and threes. They do a great job with that. Cool. And the third thing will be cleaning the glass. And they're based, again, as we look at it, there are so many different other factors too to consider, but I just wanted to get a sense of as I'm presenting and maybe show trajectory and all that and what goes on. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about the players on the Knicks, because you've got Evan Fournier, Cam Reddish, Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett. And I'm looking at past seasons and seeing how they all kind of have lined up, right? Because there's a quick desire, for example, to move Evan Fournier and Cam Reddish for some, but also why? Why is that? Is there a way that, how bad are they? How good are they? What can we infer from what we've got? So, I mean, it should go without saying, but Emmanuel Quickley has been the best of all 5 of these. It's just very apparent. He's been on the rise.
Love him.
They do, and they should. He's been fantastic.
He's been fantastic in every aspect of the game, with the exception that he doesn't make quite enough shots. We do need to say that.
Yes, exactly. And he's done a far better job in the past 2 seasons of making shots. This year just has been really tough. And even still, the analytics love him.
Yep.
Quentin Grimes has been completely on the upward trajectory. He's been great. RJ Barrett was looking shaky and he's stabilized nicely. He's on the up and up. And then you've got Evan Fournier dropping off fairly precipitously. And then you have Cam Reddish, who is pretty much around where Evan Fournier is right now. It seems like there is room for growth for where he's going to go, both in age and just where the line is looking for overall daily plus minus. But they're around the same tier. And you can clearly, if you're watching, you can clearly see there's the difference between where the latter 3 players I mentioned, Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett are, and where Evan Fournier and Cam Reddish are.
I mean, these are publicly available tools.
Free, by the way.
Yeah. And NBA teams have a lot of other stuff that we don't have access to that give them a sense of what players are worth targeting and are not worth targeting. And I would just, again, Evan Fournier is a different conversation because he makes a ton of money and there's years left on his contract. Any NBA team could have Evan Fournier, Cam Reddish today, just like they could have had him a month ago, just like they could have had him at any point over the summer for a second round pick that was going to be pretty decent, that we're sure could be pretty decent. That's what I believe. That's my 2 cents. Absolutely. Disagree if you want. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. He's still a Knick.
Mm-hmm.
So again, all these teams have ways of letting them know how good a player really is. And that's all I'll say about that.
Sure. But I should say that Darko they did a poll with 30 executives around the league, and Darko was the clear front runner of this. While it's publicly available, it's still something that NBA teams rely on at a very high level. Naming it the best, I think says
impressive.
Something about it.
Yeah, that's a good job.
I want to break it down a little bit though, because there's offense and there's defense. And so the offensive DPM here, it shows that Barrett is on the rise, Quickly is on the come down, but he was peaking at a nice point. Fournier has been falling. Cam Reddish might be, positive growth here. And Quentin Grimes actually lower than all of these guys. Granted, he's the youngest in terms of, came into the league later. So,
but a recent uptick, a recent uptick.
He's really going nicely up there. So, and then you look at the defensive side, and
oh boy, how about them apples?
Manuel Quickly, phenomenal defender. Quentin Grimes, phenomenal defender. And then you have Cam Reddish, who is still considered from the defensive DPM as a negative defender, but better than RJ Barrett, who is not doing great, but it seems he's not getting worse.
Well, let's just say that.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Evan Fournier, not RJ Barrett. Evan Fournier, who is even killed, and then RJ, who's just been sloping down and is now back on the come up.
Yeah, and this metric for anybody who's just listening to a podcast, the notable thing here about RJ is the We Here season up for defense for RJ. Passes the eye test. He felt like a really valuable defender that season. Last season, I think the defense took a bit of a step back, but not to the extent that maybe this chart makes it out to be. And then this season is when it felt like the defense really took a step back, and it's starting to come up on this chart. So I guess that's a good sign. And I think his defense has been better recently, but yeah. So it's been an up and down defensive trajectory for RJ.
Exactly. So then again, just very quickly, estimated plus minus we mentioned, it's basically just talking about how valuable players are. And this actually has Julius Randle as second, not first. First would be Mitchell Robinson. But he and Julius have the same EPM of plus 3.4. Quentin Grimes is below that, 1.8. Jalen Brunson, 0.7. Emmanuel Quickly is 0.2. And then everyone else is negative to some degree. And, it's a sort of thing where it's not necessarily like, oh, if you're below 0, you're completely bad. Because, for example, like you look at someone like RJ Barrett, where he's still in the 70th percentile for the offensive side. It's the defensive side where he's then the 34th percentile. So again, these are not kind of like one stat rules all. It's in the sense of you want to piece together all of these different things and see what the picture paints.
It is interesting that Mitchell Robinson, according to the stat, has the 30th best estimated plus minus in the entire league. The cleaning, I'll say it because I was going to say the cleaning glass stats paint the same picture, but I think you're getting cleaning glass next.
Not for this one. We can move on to the next one. But yes.
Mitch has made, the numbers say that Mitch has made the biggest difference in terms of how successful the Knicks have been on the court this year. And it's not surprising given the defense that they play and given how that defense operates when he is on the floor and playing at peak capacity. But honestly, just him being out there, it seems to just have an incredible effect, certainly on the defensive end, but on the offensive end as well. Yeah.
And just, for example, Jalen Brunson, 93rd percentile, plus 3 in terms of offense. On the defensive side, minus 2.2. That'd be the 6th percentile. Shares a lot of his time with Mitchell Robinson, whose defense is in the 94th percentile. So Mitch masks a lot of the inefficiencies or deficiencies that Brunson operates defensively. I want to talk about 2023 free agents. So let's assume that the Knicks don't care about future cap space, right? Just we'll go through these free agents and figure it out from there. And I thought would be fun is we just run through them. In this presentation, John, there are over 100 names, and we can go through them really quickly because there are a lot of players that were just
100 2023 free agents.
No. Excuse me. Through 2023, 2024, like not for 2023. There are fewer than 100 for this. There are not that many. I'm just saying through the entire presentation, we can whiz through all of them.
Yeah,
but let's focus first on restricted free agents. Kobe White, and we'll alternate, right? Kobe White doesn't make sense.
Jackson Hayes, no. Big guy for New Orleans, not making sense.
Rui Hachimura has really been battling the offensive end this year. Doesn't make sense.
Cam Reddish, next, please.
Cameron Johnson, intriguing.
Interesting name.
Yes, I just don't see the Suns necessarily giving him up unless they get something. Is it Kyle Kuzma that they're getting back? Is that where they're moving Johnson? How much money are they willing to spend when they have a new governor? Questions we can't answer. I don't think Cam Johnson is a fit for the Knicks based on what they want. Obviously, he'd fit well with any team, but I just don't think he's necessarily the guy they're going to.
I think, and again, talk about 2023 restricted free agents specifically here. Cam Johnson is arguably the best of this group. So there's some intrigue there. At the same time, you're dealing with a Suns team that kind of showed their hand with how they want to deal with restricted free agents with the whole DeAndre Ayton thing. They played hardball with him. And then ultimately they took it all the way to the furthest possible point, which is let another team give him an offer sheet. And it was a big offer sheet. It was literally the biggest offer sheet you could give DeAndre Ayton. Maybe that's where they go with Cam Johnson. But at the end of the day, what do the Suns do? They matched. And the notion that they are going to just let Cam Johnson walk when he's been an incredibly valuable part of their team, I don't see it.
Agreed. Romeo Langford, spot track's great. There are a few inaccuracies. Well, he's with the Spurs, not the Celtics. Doesn't make sense to me. Just no reason really.
Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a couple moments in the NBA. Not sure that's where the Knicks will be looking either.
Goga Bitadze, just don't see it.
Matisse Thybulle, again, fun name. He can't get on the court consistently for a healthy Sixers team. I'm not sure he's the guy the Knicks will be looking for either.
PJ Washington. Now, I think that if there were questions about Mitchell Robinson or Julius Randle, it makes sense. You could even say what about having him behind one of those players? What if he's playing with Obi Toppin? I just don't see the Knicks being comfortable shelling out enough money for PJ Washington to be a backup player.
Same thing goes for the next player on the list, Grant Williams, who is a guy that his restricted free agency, I think, is going to be fascinating because he clearly wants to get paid. And he's a vital piece for a team that went to the finals last year.
Yes, he is.
Not a player. He's a power forward, not a player the Knicks are going to be looking at.
Darius Bazley, not going to move the needle in this situation.
And last, maybe least, I don't know, Dylan Windler for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah.
So we've gone through the restricted free agents. Now let's do the unrestricted free agents. Russell Westbrook. I mean, any dream of this would basically be, hey, can the Knicks move Cam Reddish, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose? And I don't see the Knicks wanting an excess of cap space to that degree this summer. So I'm going to say Russ, not in the picture.
Kyrie Irving, please God, next. Can we move on?
Yes. Kevin Love, don't see that.
No, not the right age range. D'Angelo Russell is next up. He's a player that had been linked to the Knicks in the past. Does not seem like a fit with Jalen Brunson in town.
Agreed. Similar could be said with Vucevic, especially with Mitchell Robinson on the team. If the Bulls are going to move Vucevic, probably be to another team, not the Knicks.
Harrison Barnes, I think, is an interesting name because he is just a really good player and still can play some on the wing. So if the Knicks did want to go the route of just being super big, that said, does not feel like the direction that they would go.
I also think he's a leader for the Kings team. I
don't think they want him to go anywhere.
Yeah, no reason. Jeremy Grant, speaking of, don't think the team that employs that player wants him to go anywhere.
And similarly, Miles Turner, we've already heard some reports over the last week or two that the Pacers and Turner's camp are potentially going to work on an extension. Also, Mitch Robinson is here. So, yeah.
Karis LeVert, obviously a name that the Knicks have reportedly had interest in before. Don't see it happening.
Will Barton is with the Wizards at the moment. Their season has kind of gone sideways, although they've won some games recently. He's a wing. He's an interesting name. He's a guy who probably is going to try to get one last decent contract. I don't know if he's going to get it. Older player, 32 years old, pretty soon. Not someone I can imagine the Knicks. Not good enough at that age for the Knicks to want to kick the tires there.
Mm-hmm. Christian Wood, I would be shocked just based on the fact that the Knicks don't need Christian Wood.
And he's talking about not a Tibbs guy. Terrence Ross, name the Knicks have been linked to in the past, but again, not sure they're the team that wants to give that guy his last pretty decent contract in the NBA.
Yeah. Brook Lopez is not happening.
No, Brook Lopez is not going anywhere. And the Knicks, again, have a center. Patrick Beverley. If the Knicks wanted Patrick Beverley, they'd probably get him right now. Doesn't seem like that's the direction they want to go.
Yeah. Similar could probably say with Kelly Oubre Jr. Just, you could say, look at the need of the wing. And that's certainly possible. But the inefficiency that's there, do not think the Knicks will be interested in him.
Although I will say, of all the names on this list, Oubre Jr. is the one I'd probably be least shocked by.
I'd still be surprised, but we'll continue and I'll show why.
Josh Richardson, nice game for the Spurs the other night. Again, older player, not someone that I see the Knicks looking to get in business with.
Agreed. Don't think the Grizzlies move on from Dylan Brooks midseason.
No. Dwight Powell, a name, plays for Dallas. Makes a little bit too much money for a backup center, so it doesn't fit the qualifications that we were talking about a minute ago.
Mm-hmm. Reggie Jackson, don't see the fit unless the Knicks find a way to really not want Deuce McBride in the rotation anymore, in which case they could, Jackson's probably more of a 2 than he's a 1 last I saw him, which is great because you can get Quickly and him to both play, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Okay. This is last page of this. Danny Green is currently injured. This is an interesting one because, he makes $10 million. He is probably going to come back. I don't know. There's just a lot of variables with the situation with Danny Green. Maybe the Grizzlies are looking forward to him coming back and contributing. I don't really know what to make of this. He's a local guy, though.
He is. The advantage for the Grizzlies is it's a proven winner who has experience in the finals, winning titles. And I think that means more to the Grizzlies than it probably does the Knicks, assuming Green can get on the floor. And even if he can, he can serve as a coach. Jay Crowder, don't see him coming to New York. I think based on where the Knicks are at, he's just not a piece that they need, not a piece that they would consider. I don't think he's going to see time at the wing. I think he'd be much more, guarding fours. Don't really necessarily need that at this moment.
Unless we're talking about a big Julius Randle trade, no.
Right. And we can skip the next one. This is Serge Ibaka and also Kemba Walker's 2 names down. Players who are not making the salaries that are listed. Just cross them off because they're making next to nothing. And also Kemba Walker can't be traded, period. And also the Knicks wouldn't want Kemba Walker if he could be traded. So why don't you take the name in between those two? And
that would be Dario Saric. So Dario Saric, backup center or backup big, I guess, with the Phoenix Suns. Had a cup of coffee already with Tibbs, more than a cup of coffee. He played for Tibbs for a bit in Minnesota. I don't know that experience was great for either of them. Does not seem like a fit for what the Knicks would be looking for this year.
Agreed. Jakob Poeltl, certainly going to be on the block. Yeah, but I do not see the reason why the Knicks are going after him. Just doesn't make sense to me.
No, he would require a decent haul. Mason Plumlee, if they get rid of Hardenstein, there's a guy. Unfortunately, he's making a little bit too much money, so I don't really see that one. And we've had one Plumlee. That's enough, I think.
Agreed. Seth Curry, I don't see the Nets and the Knicks trading. I also don't see Seth Curry being an option for what the Knicks are really looking for. I mean, they could, granted, but I don't think that that's up their alley anyway.
Jared Culver is trying to
It's also not his salary. Again, it's another one of the. He's not making $6.6 million, so we could probably just skip him.
Yeah, we can skip him. Go to Joe Ingles, who's working his way back for the Bucks. They're not looking to move him.
Yep. Lonnie Walker the fourth. Don't see the Lakers actually wanting to move him. Not that they wouldn't by any stretch, but I just genuinely don't think they want to.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't.
It really
either.
depends on the trade, granted, but I think they like him. I think they like him enough to want to keep him, and they have other salary in Beverly and Nunn and Russ where they don't have to move Lonnie Walker.
Like, even if they're not going for it this year anymore and they have that come to Jesus moment, like, why would you get rid of Lonnie Walker unless a team was going to give a real thing for him? And I don't see the Knicks doing that. Justin Holiday, once a Knick, always a Knick, is. Oh, wait, no. Sorry. Am I getting my holidays confused?
No, Justin Holiday was a Knick.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. No, the other Aaron Holiday is the one I was thinking of for a second. Yeah, Justin Holiday, once a Knick, always a Knick. With the Hawks, I just don't see the upgrade there over what the Knicks already have.
That's where I'm at as well. Hamidou Diallo, similar situation.
Rock's product.
Yes, he is, but just would be surprised.
Kendrick Nunn. If the Knicks are acquiring Kendrick Nunn, it's not going to be to play him.
Nope. Corey Joseph could be an option, but Knicks don't really need another point guard.
Not if they do go the ball handler route, it's not going to be Corey Joseph. And then last but not least here, Torrey Craig with the Indiana Pacers. Good backup wing. Again, not someone the Knicks I would expect to be looking to acquire.
Agreed. So I actually want to take a few of the names just to throw them in to show the comparison with Evan Fournier and Cam Reddish. Picked Will Barton, Karis LeVert, Terrence Ross. And if you're watching, you can see what's very evident. And if you're not watching, Terrence Ross is not worth trading for under any circumstance. It's just not at all. The huge drop off.
Yeah, I mean, just the notion for the chart for anyone listening on the podcast is just to show, like, Evan Fournier, we've seen him, so he is the least sexy thing on the face of the earth. Cam Reddish, he's glued to the bench. He can't get off. He's still sexy to some, but he's clearly not very sexy to the Knicks. So there is this sense of well, if you could upgrade these sorts of players to another different player who is a name that we recognize, again, someone like a Will Barton or a Karis LeVert or a Terrence Ross who have had real moments in the NBA. Where they've had they've been meaningful contributors, you think okay, maybe pay a premium or some kind of price of some sort to make that sort of swap. Again, not necessarily saying that the Cavs want to trade Karis LeVert, but maybe they do. This is a chart that kind of shows, based on the analytics at least, guys like Will Barton, Karis LeVert, Terrence Ross, they're not changing your life as a team.
They're really not. But if you want to look at the offensive side, really the only player who's better than zero is Will Barton. Everyone else is kind of below that waterline. And then defensively, they're all more skewing on the negative side. But here's the funny thing. Yeah. If you look at Will Barton, you're thinking oh, wow, he's this dude is worth trading for. Look at what it is. Well, he's also really not, because then this is the beauty of having to look at other stats to help you with context too, where he's in the first percentile on the defensive end, according to EPM, the 14th percentile on offense. And he's 32 years old. He's turning 32. And he's just, inefficient. He's the 10th percentile among wings. You can't finish at the rim, 12th percentile. Can't even finish in the mid range, 17th percentile. It's bad. You're basically just talking about a guy who can shoot threes and isn't doing much in other areas on the court.
The complicated part of this conversation, just to hit it on the head for me at least, is that if you're going to sit here and tell me that the Knicks could be a better team if they swapped out or lessened significantly Deuce McBride's minutes and inserted a guy who, again, Will Barton is a guy. He's a name who has had meaningful moments as an offensive player in the league and is clearly an offensive threat more than Deuce McBride is right now. Yeah, I can buy that. Is it worth it for the Knicks for where they're at, based on the ages of these players, based on the investment that they have in one player versus what they would have to invest in another. The defensive side of the ball is also worth mentioning here, but also like right now, like Emmanuel Quickly, we've just seen him score. What did he score last 2 games? 35 and 27 points, I think. Whatever it is. He's averaging over 20 points a game for the last 7 games he's played with the ball in his hands, doing a lot of cool stuff, really, really reaching new heights. If you're trading for a guy like Will Barton or Terrence Ross or Karis LeVert or any of these players, might it make your team better? Yeah, it might make your team better. But at what expense? Not only Deuce McBride, but like, let's maybe keep giving Emmanuel Quickly the ball. I know the backup minutes haven't gone so great this year so far, without Jalen Brunson on the court or without Julius Randle on the court. But like, hey, maybe this is what a smart team does. Keep giving those minutes Quickly. Keep giving those minutes to RJ again to run the backup units. See where it takes you. Keep giving Deuce McBride time. Like, not the worst thing in the world.
Agreed. And then I just want to show a few other players. Still having Fournier and Reddish, but now adding Kelly Oubre Jr., Josh Richardson, and Patrick Beverley. Beverley's the best out of all of these. He's actually a positive player. I think a huge thing is how he's being used in LA. He's being used to guard wings. He's guard. It's really what he is. But he's still, he's on the decline. It's very evident to see. The other players, they're, Kelly Oubre Jr. and Josh Richardson are ascending. They're getting close to that neutral point. But again, you have to split it up. On the offensive side, Kelly Oubre Jr. looks great. He does. He looks the best out of all of them.
He's shooting a lot this year.
He is, but that's the thing. He's shooting a lot. It's not that he's shooting it well. He's just shooting a lot.
Isn't he averaging like 20 a game? Or whereabouts?
It's up there. He's not efficient, as I mentioned. And Josh Richardson, you're seeing more of an increase. But then when you consider the defense, Kelly Oubre is the worst out of all of them by a significant metric. The gap between him and Patrick Beverley on the defensive end, as you could expect, is night and day. And I don't know about you, John, but I feel like for all of these players that we've discussed, none really fit cleanly. Would you agree?
It's less about the fit for me, and it's more about just like, is it worth it? Like, well,
that's what I mean by fit. Not like position.
Yes, I understand. Okay. So can you sit here and be like, the Knicks will be a better team tomorrow if they swap out Deuce McBride's minutes for Patrick Beverley's minutes? Yeah, I could buy that. Patrick Beverley, I know he's not shooting worth a goddamn this year, but like, he has a track record of being able to hit some threes. He's a pest and a half. Defensively, I think he's still got some upside. Like, that's not enough of an upgrade or worth it for me to pull the plug on Deuce. That's for sure.
Agreed.